How's it going? I'm T. Frank. Welcome to February. We are into the full off season, and I've been doing a lot of studying. We talked a lot about the Penn State offense for a good bit of January, so I want to get into it and dive into the defense and show you some of the film of what I'm thinking about, because this one is more of a projection. So Penn State's offense, they're bringing it over from Iowa State with the starting quarterback and a lot of the receivers from Iowa State. So we know what that's going to look like. We know how that's going to operate. I'm very, 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 very confident about that. But the defense is bringing parts and pieces from all over, including D'Anton Lynn, defensive coordinator, who's run a variety of styles within what I would consider a similar system at UCLA and USC, along with pieces from Iowa State. And so I wanted to bring my view of what I've been seeing them build here to this video. So we're going to get into some of the coaches' film to discuss different players and templates of what I'm thinking they need. And so one of the biggest discussion points here has been the defensive ends, right? They don't have an elite speed rusher off the edge. And I wanted to explain why I think Alexander McPherson, short or long term, could fit into this and what he looks like to me on film, what I think the plan is, what the template they're trying to build with more physical defensive ends over speed guys. And so we're going to get into that here on the video, and then we're going to get into some of the stuff from USC that we saw last year, where they are going to go with some true odd front defenses if what they're building looks like what they're building, which seems very similar. So that's all coming up here on this particular video. So like the video if you like that kind of stuff. We're doing more of this film breakdown as I can. It's a little bit of a longer process, so it doesn't happen every single week with all the stuff going over bluewhiteillustrated.com. But I do want to get this stuff to you because I think the visuals, I'm a visual learner myself, so like understanding these things from this particular aspect, I think is really important. So we're going to get into that right now. And the first thing I want to start with is we're going to go back to 2023. We're going to go back to UCLA, and not all of this is going to be directly relatable to what they're going to do at Penn State, in my opinion. I don't think they're going to do some of these things, but the template of what they're looking for from their edge rushers seems pretty clear based on the players that stayed and the guys they have on the roster. So here is what D'Anton Lynn was able to do at UCLA with Laiatu Latu. So I've been trying to explain why and how I think Penn State is going to build their defense next year, and how I think they're going to try and get pressure with these mixed fronts. And we're just going to call this, for simplicity, a mixed front, where you got a defensive end lined up here, you got a nose tackle, and then in this situation, because again, it's the former Pac-12, a defensive end playing 3 technique, and then an edge defender over here. It's a mixed front. You've got a 3-down look, but you're going to get a 4-man pass rush out of this particular look with a zone pressure. But what you're really doing here is you're putting your best player in a position to succeed by giving him an easy matchup. So for those of you that know or remember, this is Laiatu Latu here. He is a future first-round draft pick, and I think he's an important piece in understanding what D'Anton Lynn wants to do with this particular front, given what they've acquired in the transfer portal. So let's talk about that in just a second. But what we have here, just to explain what we're getting, is we're getting a zone pressure where you've got this player coming inside, Latu's coming inside and into the A gap, swimming a guard. You've got an edge pressure from the middle linebacker, and you've got a slant from the defensive line this way, with this player dropping out into a zone. But what you're doing, in essence, is you're giving your best player, Latu, a matchup with a guard where he can win quickly up the middle and get a quick pressure, because this player is not as good of a pass protector as everybody else. And of course, this is the Colorado offensive line, so everyone's not very good. But you're giving him an immediate win. You can only do that consistently if you have a guy who is has the size and physicality to play inside. Latu on the 2023 UCLA roster is 6'5", 265 pounds. He is a big power defensive end. Not the fastest, twitchiest guy in the world, not Abdul Carter. But when I say there's more than one way to get pressure, there's more than one way to win, this is what we're talking about. Swim move and the quickness, the agility, plus the size to play inside if this is a run. Because remember, this could be a run, and so he has to be prepared for that to be a run and to hold the A gap in that particular situation. As a guy who's got those dimensions, that's something he can do. Now, so to that point, you need guys that are bigger, longer, and more physical to play inside the tackle. And you could see where even if he didn't slant into the A gap there, he's lined up over the tackle, where, even inside a little bit. So you need guys that have a bigger frame to do that. And this is where it's going to get into the projection. So we're going to get into a couple of guys that bring versatility to the front. So I just want to go to a one-to-one comparison here, and then we'll get into some of the other varieties we can get from the defense. But this is where it's a projection. And hear me, please hear me. I'm not saying that I think Alexander McPherson is going to be Laiatu Latu. But if you're looking at what is the template for how he could be productive, it's that. And so let's take a look at what a power defensive end who's 240 pounds looks like. So I want to show you some of the reps that made me think that there's a good amount of potential here with Alexander McPherson. He's right here on the right side. I don't know if this play actually got any pressure on the quarterback that made the quarterback step up in the pocket, or if it was just that the quarterback is kind of a one read and run quarterback for Kansas State, which I think is probably more the case. But this is a good pass rush from a technical standpoint. From a result standpoint, it's not. I'm not trying to argue that. But what I really like with defensive ends is when they're able to use length to win. And you see this right here. So let's go back to the interaction. The defensive end wants to get inside the chest of the tackle. And you see that with these super long arms. He grabs inside the chest plate. And so now he has control of this interaction. You see that. Now he presses out the tackle. He's guiding where they're going. And he's able to use this to bend around the edge. Not very well. Not like he's a Gumby. It's not like we're talking about Myles Garrett here. But then he's able to pull down, use enough strength to pull down and turn the corner on the tackle. Because he wins the first interaction, and now he's got control to then rip through and try and get a pressure on the quarterback. This, again, I just want to say, this is at 240 pounds. As a true freshman, that's some good stuff. Like, this is, if you're projecting upward mobility, the upward trajectory in a player's career, to be able to do this as a freshman, this is a good starting place. Now, is this kind of a right angle? Does he go up the field and then over? Yes, he does. You would very much like this to be much more of an arc than he's able to get on this particular pass rush and get to the quarterback smoothly. You want him to do this quicker and get to, on this line with an immediate win. But again, we're talking about a freshman and a guy who is 240 pounds with as big of a frame as he has. I think if you add strength to this rush, add another 15 pounds of muscle and weight, this is a guy that could have the strength to play through, with power and length to get to the quarterback without elite burst and speed off the edge. I'm not saying that that's the kind of player he is, but that's what you could see from a guy like Alexander McPherson. But it is a projection. He's got to get bigger and stronger for that to be true. But I think this is a good example of what he could be in the future with that added strength in the weight room. So I've broken down where McPherson played inside a little bit as well. And he has the as you can see there, and as I've outlined, he's got the frame to be able to do that. And that's why it's important is to our next piece of the puzzle. But just to kind of put a bow on this, if you're looking for a guy who, if you squint and you'd say, what are the characteristics that made Laiatu Latu great? Well, it was his hand fighting, his length, and his fluidity and power, right? That is what Alexander McPherson is. So that's the gamble, right? I'm not saying that they think he's going, maybe he could be that this year. If they get him in the weight room, he's in there right now making all that happen. But eventually, I think that's the path. Now, from that, you need to be able to have guys that have the versatility to kick inside. We talked about that with him. Ezeogu is another guy that can do that. And then if you're going to have those guys kick inside, who's lining up on the edge? How are we equating other players into the pass rush? That's where linebacker Caleb Bacon comes in. And we're going to get into the, as I say in the video, we're going to get into the Iowa State scheme, but I would not take a lot from like the alignments and the situations there because it's not necessarily what we're going to see exactly here at Penn State. We'll get to that in just 1 second, but first, this.
Have you heard of Wave Fruit Farm? It's this great farm market bakery and cafe. You can shop with them either at their farm in Port Matilda or downtown State College.
No way!
Yes, Wave Fruit Farm. They have all sorts of seasonal fruits and veggies.
Way cool!
No, Wave Fruit Farm. But anyway, you should visit their bakery and cafe. They serve amazing food all day.
Way!
Fruit Farm!
So this is a shorter video, and it's a little more direct about Caleb Bacon. So here we go. Here we have another situation, almost the exact same, just on the other side of the field. So this is we're calling this a linebacker, okay? So he's playing in in alignment, because if you look here, his heels are at the same line as the line of scrimmage. He is walked up to the line of scrimmage. Now he is in an even 2-point stance. He's not in a rush 2-point stance. So he can do a couple of things here because he is a linebacker. He can play man coverage here. He can press that player. He can rush the passer, and he can stop the run. So he is a jack player that can do a little bit of everything in this situation, and that's what he does. In this run defense situation, he sets the edge of the offensive line for the defense, and then you have, again, we're focusing a lot on Caleb Bacon because I think this is going to be the main thing in this offense. A subcategory of what they're going to do for the D'Anton Lynn defense is have Bacon in similar situations to this. So it's not necessarily going to be from a 3-man line of scrimmage, by the way. And by the way, Iowa State, their official depth chart had them with 4 defensive linemen. They just rarely played with 4 defensive linemen. Bacon was the guy who kind of made up that tweener role there. So the versatility, you can see, you need the tweeners between defensive ends and defensive tackles-ish, and then linebackers and edge rushers. And so we got guys we can identify on the roster who have those particular skills. Another guy, if he, again, gets bigger, and these are the ifs and buts, and these are the where is the special, LeVar Arrington II is a special athlete. If he can play 245 pounds, 240 pounds like Caleb Bacon, he's got to gain a lot of weight this offseason. That's a role he could play because that is something he did in high school as a pass rusher. So he needed to learn the other aspects of coverage, run defense from off the ball, all those things this past year in his redshirt year. But what we're building towards is the versatility to play a 4-down front and then to stem to a 5-down front or to a 5-man line of scrimmage. Then there will be times, if they follow the template that they did last year, sub packages where Penn State's going to be playing a true odd defense. And so we're going to wrap a little bit of this up here in this final clip. 2 things, kind of 2 divergent thoughts. So you can get to a 5-man defensive line with Caleb Bacon and a 4-down front. So trying to piece all these things together, what you saw. And then you can also do it with 5 defensive linemen. And I think we've seen them add enough of those defensive tackle body types that they have the versatility to do either. So it's 2 different things. But you will see odd looks, odd fronts from Penn State this year. Here's a little bit of a longer clip of a breakdown of the USC defense last year. Okay, so now we fast forwarded to the Big Ten, and USC is playing Northwestern, a run-heavy team that is going to try and play with a lot of bodies up front, and they want to fill all these gaps. You see up front here right now to start the game, we talked about in 2023, a 3 defensive end system. Now we've got a 3 defensive tackle system. And this is, I think, the versatility baked into D'Anton Lynn's defense that we're going to go through right now with the different body types they've got at different positions. So let's go through these guys and see who they are and what they do. 6'5", 285-pound defensive end Anthony Lucas. Right here we have Jade Abasiri, 6'5", 290. Keyshawn Silver as your pure nose tackle, 330 pounds, 6'4". Over here we have Devin Tompkins, 290 pounds at 6'5". And then out here, Braylon Shelsby, who's like your pure defensive end body type, the guy who's closest to being a defensive end at 6'5", 265. This is a true odd front. They are in an odd front to start this game. And I know it's not a pure, like, what you would think of as an odd front where you would have head up as a 5 technique here, head up as a nose tackle, head up as a 5 technique. It is shifted this way because of the 2 tight end front over here to start the game, right? So they've got 2 tight ends. They're shifting towards the strength in this unit. So that's why, you can get into a 5-man defensive front in this defense. And again, they play counter. They go over this way. This is what I'm talking about when it comes to size and it comes to, we want bigger players. This is 330 pounds right here, right? Okay, 330 pounds doesn't look like 330 pounds when you get shoved out of the A-gap. You still got to be good at football. You still got to play with a base. You still got to play with technique. And you can see, I'm a tangent here, but you see how he locks out? See how he extends? His feet are planted. This makes him a prime candidate to get hit right here in the hips and fly out of the gap because he doesn't keep his feet churning and he doesn't have, his body weight under control underneath his center of gravity. Anyway, neither here nor there. The Penn State has better defensive tackles than that, which is why they went out and they got Keanu Williams and Siali Tapaki to play situations like this and not get blown off the ball. But let's take a look at what it could be for Penn State. Let's just run down the body types and what they might be. We've got Eziogu, who could play out here. This is just purely based on their physical dimensions. I don't know that I would do this. I think they can do different things that with the bodies they have on the roster. But let's say just 285 pounds. Let's say that's Eziogu, right? A former defensive end in an odd front who played more inside. He can play that position here. Now 290 pounds. This can be Armstrong Nadim, if you want that to be. Over here at nose tackle, we can have this be Keanu Williams or Siale Tabake. And then over here, if you want this to be any of the other defensive players on the roster, even a Ty Blanding can play this 5 technique as a super athletic 5 technique defensive tackle. And then out here, you can have any of your edge rushers that you want over here. Penn State's got the body types on the roster to do this and to do what we saw previously with the UCLA example of having 3 defensive ends. They can do either of these, whichever one they want. And this is, I think, where it evolved in the Big Ten is now you've got the versatility with more defensive bodies types, defensive tackles specifically, in a conference that wants to run the ball. This is a run-first team, but you do have their spread. They do go into spread formations, right? So now you have more versatility. You've got to have more answers. And so now we just go to a straight even front here. I'm sorry, this is just an even front and 4-down front. I'm not saying this is an even front. They're going to a 4-down front. You got a classic 1 technique, a 3 technique, and 2 edge rushers. And these guys have the ability, when they're in a 2-point stance, this is an important thing. So if they're in a 2-point stance, they have the ability to drop into coverage, and that's what you're going to get here. You're going to get a B-gap blitz from your Mike linebacker, and you're going to have 10 drop into coverage. That's what they're looking for, the versatility of players on the edge to be able to drop, to be able to rush the passer, play the run. That's what you're going to need in this defense. And with what you've got on the roster, once again, if this is your will linebacker, this is Tony Rojas or Caleb Bacon, that's a guy that can blitz pretty damn well. And that's, I think, the versatility they're trying to add into the scheme that's coming from UCLA. So, are they running a 4-down front? They are running a 4-down front, but they can get in and out of other defensive fronts and give the offense, and the offensive line harder matchups based on the things that they can do, making that offensive line work harder from a mental standpoint by not being, okay, so we know the defensive ends are going to line up outside. So essentially what you've got there is, and I wanted to leave that in there about some of the defensive linemen because there were some questions or there were some criticisms about USC's defense. To me, it's like the actual execution of the play by the player. D'Anton Lynn didn't bring his defensive line coach with him. He's got 2 new defensive line coaches at Penn State and ones that coached pretty good defensive tackles at UCLA over the last couple of years. So I think the improvement from USC to Penn State should be pretty significant as long as they can get all these parts and pieces to work together. And that's going to be the true test of this and something that I think I cut off there at the end of that video. There's a little bit more, but I wanted to say it here and a little more plainly. USC put guys in position to make plays based on what they wanted them or perceived their skills to be, maybe not necessarily what they could actually do. I think Penn State has players that can actually do these things now. Bacon is more of an edge rusher. You don't have to put a 285-pound guy out on the edge who you're asking him to drop every once in a while and rush the passer. I think they can find guys that are better at those tasks than the body types and players they had at USC. But the question is going to be, in the end, what you're doing there at USC's, you're trying to get one-on-ones, right? So you're zone blitzing, trying to overload one side so you get one-on-ones so guys can win. It's easier to win if you get one-on-ones for players, especially if you have a guy that you think is your best pass rusher, but you still have to have guys that win those one-on-ones. You can still rush 4 from a zone drop or from a zone pressure and lose all 4 interactions. That's a reality for this Penn State defense. So there's a couple of things that have to happen for a lot of this to work out. We went through a lot of different things. The versatility of different players, how they can fit in, and then some of the sub-packages they can get into. I wrote a full breakdown of a bunch of different sub-packages over at bluewhiteillustrated.com if you want to check those out. You can sign up now for just $1. Get access for a week. Check that out. And of course, if you want to subscribe to the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel. So when things like this happen, when I drop videos where we're getting into the X's and O's, you'll have a heads up on, hey, T. Frank's dropped the Monday video with some of that stuff going on. Like and subscribe. That always is helpful. Enable notifications. We will be back with the BWI live show on Tuesday. Until then, we'll talk to you later.